I told my best friend of 15 years that I couldn't be her emergency contact anymore, and I did it over the phone on a Tuesday afternoon like I was canceling a subscription, and I have not slept properly since. Nadia and I met in college orientation. We were assigned to the same table during some icebreaker activity, and we spent the entire thing making quiet observations to each other about the facilitator's lanyard collection, instead of participating, and that was it. We were friends. 15 years of being the person she called first. 15 years of being proud of that. Nadia has anxiety and depression, both diagnosed, both medicated, both managed with varying degrees of success depending on the year. I want to say that carefully because I am not telling you this to frame her as a burden. I'm telling you because it's the context without which nothing else makes sense. For the last 2 years, the calls have gotten harder. Not more frequent exactly, but heavier. She'll call at 11 at night and she's in a spiral, and I'll stay on the phone for an hour and a half talking her back to something stable. I don't resent that in isolation. What I started to resent was that it only moved in one direction. Last spring I went through something. My relationship of 4 years ended. Not dramatically, but in that slow, terrible way where you both know for months and nobody says it. And when it finally ended, I called Nadia and she listened for about 12 minutes and then said she had to tell me something that had been weighing on her, and the next 40 minutes were about her. I told myself she hadn't noticed. I told myself it was a bad week for her. I filed it away in a place I didn't look at directly. In September, my father had a health scare. 3 days in the hospital turned out to be manageable, but the 72 hours before we knew that were among the worst of my life. I texted Nadia from the waiting room. She responded 6 hours later with a heart emoji and said she'd been having a really hard day and would call me soon. She called 4 days later and asked how I was doing, and then, before I could answer fully, said she needed to process something that had happened at work. I sat with that for 2 months. I should say here that I have my own therapist. My therapist has, on more than one occasion, used the phrase one-sided with a careful neutrality that I understood to be meaningful. In November, I found out through her other friend group that Nadia had listed me as her emergency contact at her new doctor's office and also at her workplace, neither of which she'd asked me about. I don't know why that was a specific thing, but something that had been quietly accumulating in me for 2 years reached whatever its limit was. I called her on a Tuesday. I had thought about how to say it. I told her I loved her and that I wasn't going anywhere, but that I needed to be honest about something. I said I couldn't be her emergency contact, that I wasn't in a position to take on that responsibility, and that I thought she should ask someone who was better situated to show up in a crisis the way that role required. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Did I do something?" I said it wasn't about one thing. She said, "Are you ending our friendship?" I said no, I was trying to be honest about what I could actually offer. She said, "I didn't know you felt this way."